Hey, songwriters. I've been meaning to ask you a question. Are your habits helping your creativity, or are they quietly sabotaging it? Today, I'm not talking quick tips or surface level tricks. I want to talk about 4 powerful habits that can really put emphasis on your songwriting system. Not just how often you write, but how easily you write, how confident you are when you are songwriting, and how consistently you show up as a songwriter. Habits shape everything in our lives. They are the quiet routines working in the background that you hardly even have to think about. And they can either be pushing you forwards creatively or they pulling you off track without you even realizing it. But I've got some good news. Once you realize it, once you become aware of them, you can change. And when you build the right songwriting habits, it becomes easier, more fun, and way more fulfilling. If you're new here, my name's Celine, and I've been writing songs now for over 3 decades. And over that time, I've discovered positive habits make a massive difference to my songwriting. One of my favorite books on the topic is this one. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's taught me that tiny, consistent actions can lead to remarkable changes over time. And there is so much in this book that we can apply to our lives as songwriters to help us be more creative and more prolific. Oh, and I just want to point out that I want to make this video about positive habits. I'm not going to reprimand anyone for your bad habits. Trust me, I have enough. But if you want to develop your songwriting by fine-tuning great habits, then let's get started. So first up, let's talk about making it obvious. To create any new habit, you really need to make it obvious and easy as possible. Remove as many barriers to this new habit as you can to make it actually doable. And whether that's the fear of failure, self-doubt, or even distractions of everyday life, these obstacles can paralyze your creativity. And one effective strategy that I use is to create a dedicated, distraction-free space where you can write without interruption. I have my studio space here. I always have my journals and notebooks at hand. I have plenty of pens. My guitars are here, and I have plenty of guitar picks. They are everywhere because I lose them so much. I keep my recording gear set up at all times, so I don't have to go rummaging for cables. My mic is on a boom arm, ready for quick recording sessions, and it also stays plugged into my audio interface at all times. Headphones are always hanging right where I can grab them, and I even leave the little adapter plugged into the audio interface so I never lose that little thing either. And this is a setup that I find enables me to just drop into a songwriting session, journaling session, or recording session at any time. I've removed as many barriers as I can that would hinder me doing the thing. And I still tweak my setup from time to time when I find new ways that my procrastination wants to kind of scupper my efforts. When I need to, I also set myself clear boundaries for my creative time. I set my phone to focus mode so I don't get any of those notifications and little red dots that steal my attention. I sometimes also put my phone in a different room because if I'm trying to have some deep focus or some real kind of flow state mentality in what I'm doing, having it not even there to pick up is even better. It's an extra barrier that I've removed. I've also removed all the social media apps from my iPad and have none on my computer so that I don't get notifications about silly things that I don't need to spend time on right that second. I let my family know that I'm in songwriting mode so they can appreciate that I don't want distractions and to be disturbed during this time. And occasionally I even use a timer to give myself enough time so I can focus. Recognizing these mental blocks as challenges to overcome rather than huge obstacles is a great mindset to adopt if you don't already identify. And by recognizing and actively working to overcome these obstacles, you're setting the stage for a more productive songwriting session. So at any time, I can walk in here, grab a guitar and work on a song, start writing, do some journaling, and it requires minimum effort to do it, which is what this is all about. Creating habits and creating an environment so that I can flourish. Oh, and I think it's worth mentioning here that I try and keep my studio space as clear and as clean as possible. Well, I do now at least. My last studio space was a very small room. It was full with lots of incidental stuff because there was no other place to put it. And sometimes I felt like suffocated in that room when trying to write. This room is much better. I've got a clear surface. I have no distractions available to me unless they're creative distractions. And I feel much comfier here in this studio. So this studio is a big improvement on my last, which leads me quite nicely onto the next point. Making tiny improvements every day on every songwriting session or even on every song can lead to massive improvements over time. 1% doesn't sound like a lot at all, but actually, making 1% improvements every day can see you 37 times more productive in the space of a year. 37 times. That's huge. But each of those 1% every single day are tiny. And that's the power of incremental change, as James Clear in his book Atomic Habits mentions a lot. And it's something, probably the biggest thing I took away from the book is you can make very tiny little changes to your systems, to your day, to your week. And actually, over time, you'll start to see big results. So, as an example today, I'm about a quarter of my notebook left that I use quite regularly each day. So instead of waiting to finish that notebook, I've ordered a replacement for it today. So I don't actually have to finish the book and then be a few days. Actually, it can be a few weeks to get deliveries out here to me in Kenya. So I'm never going to be without my notebook, which is a positive, and that's my 1% for today. Another small example of a 1% improvement could be going through my voice memos on my phone from time to time. Whenever I'm in the moment and recording them, they all seem to have the same name, but with a different number at the end. And there's absolutely no order or structure to that at all. So I could label these recordings and it will make it so much easier next time I want to go back to them when having a moment of inspiration. And that 1% improvement helps with the first point of making it easy, obvious, and removing barriers. So having them all labeled, sometimes I use a song name idea, title idea. Sometimes it's the chord progression that I've used in that idea. It enables me to pick them up and run with them in a songwriting session so much easier. The biggest thing I've had to learn about 1% improvements, though, is that in the moment, it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere and improving at all. There's such small incremental improvements that it's not noticeable in the moment. But over time, I can't tell you how much I benefit from these small improvements over a large overarching goal or task that I'm working towards anyway. These small improvements give me a much more fulfilling and long-lasting sustainable improvement. And when these little tiny things are helping you move forward, you're improving your craft with every tiny implication. Remember that every time you're moving forward, it's momentum. And over time, these minor changes create major breakthroughs. I always have to remind myself that consistency over intensity creates the most significant transformation. And there's no instant gratification, but over the long term, it is profound. Now, I want to talk about time. No one ever has enough time. And I am constantly being told by people that I need to make more time for songwriting, or I'm too busy for songwriting. And I want to stop everyone right there because you cannot make more time. Time is finite. What you need to do is manage your time better. You can't have more than 24 hours a day. There is only 7 days in a week. But you can implement some changes and new habits to mean that your time is better spent. Now, this is quite honestly one of the biggest revelations that I've had over the last, say, 4 to 5 years, in that I was always chasing time. And now I find that actually I have time available because of the routines and the habits that I've set up, so that I'm always available to be able to songwrite, to fit in social activities, work, and all the other things that are important to me, I can do. And I briefly just touched on it then, but the main way that I've achieved this is by good habits, but also solid routines. And routines in themselves are just a collection of habits done all at the same time or within the same time frame. So for me, one of the most important routines I have now is my morning routine. And it's to make sure I'm not wasting hours on my phone or pressing snooze button 4 or 5 times before I get out of bed. I am not a morning person. It's also having a planned out week, which I do on a Sunday evening or sometimes very first thing on a Monday morning over coffee, which then actually brings it into my morning routine. And having that solid morning routine has enabled me to set a much more positive tone for my day and ultimately my songwriting. So instead of hitting snooze a few times and diving into my phone screen before running headfirst into some kind of chaotic day, I now have structure. I have routine. I start with a shower, I tidy around the house, and then maybe I sit for 10 minutes while I have a coffee and journal. It helps clear my head. It enables me to start the day in the best possible way for me. For you, though, your routine may look completely different. Yours might start when you get home from work. That's when you have your free time so that you can design it as you want. Or it may be getting the kids ready for school. And once they've gone to school, then you can start your own routine. And once you have that routine in place, it's going to enable you to clear your head ready for some songwriting time. You could include a few minutes of meditation, reading a few pages of your latest book, or whatever you think is good for you. But the important bit I'd like to stress on you guys is try and do it without your mobile phone or without a screen involved. I also really advocate doing a time audit on your week. If you've never done anything like this before, it can be a little bit strange. But what I mean is to kind of go through a normal, typical type of week for you and record down for each hour what you were doing in that hour. And then at the end of the week, you can look back over that and identify times when actually you could have spent that time, that block of time could have been spent doing something else, such as songwriting. Or you could have been doing some stuff earlier in the day to free up that time later in the day for you to spend a good solid couple of hours working on your next song. Especially use that to highlight the things that are taking up your time, don't add value or joy to you. It's quite an important thing to kind of ease out and tweak out those things that you spend an awful lot of time doing that are not really adding value or joy to your life. And then you can start reapplying that time to your songwriting. Okay, on to our last point now, and that is consuming creatively. We live in a time where we consume more in one single day than our ancestors a century ago would consume all year. It really is no wonder that our brains are on fire and we struggle to remember information. Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, that's a really good idea for a song. I will write that down or record a voice memo in a little while, and then only to have it disappear into the ether? I'm pretty sure it's not just me getting older. I think it's a thing that happens to everybody young and old. But I also think it's linked to how much information our brains are required to store and manage on a daily basis. And it also kind of links back to our first point of making it easy, obvious, and breaking down barriers. In that, if we don't record it or write it down straight away, that's why we have notebooks and everything all set up to make it easy, then we're going to lose that inspiration and that thought. So one of the ways that I tackle this is by changing my consumption habits. What I try and do is I try my best whenever possible and whenever I feel like the need to consume creatively. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, I love listening to podcasts when I'm driving on my own. And when I do that, I listen to things such as The Rest is Entertainment, which is a brilliant podcast, but it's not really helping or inspiring my creativity. So when I want to consume for longer periods of time, I choose podcasts such as Soda Jerker, which have some really insightful interviews with artists and songwriters, going into detail in their processes and new album releases that I find absolutely fascinating. And I come away from that so inspired. Another great example, which I actually listened to / watched on YouTube recently, is Simon Sinek interviewed and had a really insightful discussion with Jacob Collier on his podcast, A Bit of Optimism. Jacob shared his unique experience and approach to music, emphasizing the importance of blending structure with spontaneity and mixing in curiosity wherever possible. And that's how his creativity has expanded over time. Really, really worth a watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts. I also read, and I don't do that with a Kindle or on an iPhone. I do it analog, the old school way of actually physically owning a book. Now, don't get me wrong, ebooks and blogs all have a place in the world. But for me, my creative consumption, I prefer to do away from a digital screen. So I take myself off with my book to a park, a coffee shop, or sometimes out on my balcony just to get some fresh air at the same time. So I'm not only enjoying an analog habit, I'm kind of joining it and mashing it together with other positive habits, such as getting some sunlight and some fresh air. And switching off from the digital world from time to time is something that I have found really positive for me. But it doesn't all have to be away from a screen. You could watch really insightful educational YouTube videos. I tend to watch YouTube for creative inspiration when I'm down at the gym, sat on the bike or on the treadmill. And I like to watch the Professor of Rock with his really in-depth track and album breakdowns and history of how they were made, etc. And also sometimes mix that up with the likes of Mary Spender, who's got some really great vlog type videos around her life as a songwriter and a musician, but also some really insightful video essays as well. These are just a few of the examples that I like to enjoy. And I really encourage you to go out there and find your own that you enjoy. So when you're consuming, it's not mind-numbing, it's creative consumption that can lead to more inspiration for your songwriting. So there we go. These are the habits that I really believe have made the biggest impact on my life as a songwriter, meaning I'm more focused, more creative, and more productive. And I hope you got some value out of this video. And if you did, I would really appreciate a like, which helps me reach more songwriters just like you. And if you're interested in watching any more of my videos, you might want to check out this one here. It's been quite popular. It's all about daily writing habits that you can employ in your life on a daily basis for less than 10, 15 minutes a day. I'll see you in the next one.